In the 1970s, Warner Leroy began development on a massive entertainment complex to service the tri-state area. The complex was in many ways to be the northeast version of the Astro Domain, consisting of restaurants, shops, hotels, a sports complex, a wildlife park, and a theme park. The complex was slated to open in multiple phases. Phase 1, known as Great Adventure and Wild Safari, opened its doors in 1974 to incredible success that just 1 year later the park almost doubled in size to help with capacity as it wasn't able to handle the crowds. Due to the continued growing demand for the park, Warner Leroy sold Great Adventure in 1977 to Six Flags. The newly renamed Six Flags Great Adventure continued to be extremely popular, adding more thrilling rides like Lightning Loops, a pair of Aero Shuttle Loop coasters that opened in 1978, and Rolling Thunder, a racing wooden coaster that opened in 1979. At the start of the 1980s, Six Flags Great Adventure was on its rise to fame, getting over 3.5 million guests annually. But a series of events and accidents over the decade would greatly impact guest perception of the park. The first began in 1981, where a 20-year-old park employee and a guest were both killed in two separate accidents on Rolling Thunder. The 20-year-old employee was ejected from Rolling Thunder during a morning test cycle, and just 2 weeks later, a guest choked to death while riding Rolling Thunder. Both of these accidents caused the park attendance to drop to 3.4 million, even though the brand new Roaring Rapids made it so that the park was hitting record high attendance numbers during the summer months. And by the end of the 1982 season, attendance dropped to 2.85 million, even though there was multiple new additions added to the park. Things were finally starting to look up for Great Adventure, and the park ended the 1983 season with 3.4 million guests. The park announced Sarah Havel Bobsled, an intimate bobsled coaster that would be built at the park for the 1984 season. Sadly, one of the worst accidents to hit the theme park industry would happen at the park in the spring, when the Haunted Castle, a haunted house walkthrough attraction, caught on fire and caused the death of 8 teenagers. Guests began to no longer feel safe at the park due to these accidents and fights happening on a semi-regular basis. Because of this, park attendance would drop to 2.8 million. Park attendance wouldn't rise to over 3 million guests again until the 1986 season, when the park installed Ultra Twister, a unique Togo coaster. On April 19, 1987, an unidentified gunman fired several shots into a crowd inside the main gate, wounding one man and sending panicked guests running for safety. It was the third violent incident of the day following 2 earlier unrelated stabbings. After these incidents, Great Adventure began the use of metal detectors at the front gate and increased security presence around the park. This showed guests that Great Adventure was serious about their commitment to guest safety. But in June of the same year, the park would see another major setback when a guest was killed in an accident on Lightning Loops. When the guest boarded the train after it had already been checked by park staff and was dispatched, causing the guest to fall to her death. And just 1 month later, a guest broke their leg on Sarah Havel Bobsled when the operator accidentally dispatched a ride vehicle when the guest was attempting to enter the ride vehicle. It was clear that major changes needed to be made at the park. The park updated many of the ride's control panels to feature dispatch enable buttons, which would require both the operator and the attendants to push their dispatch enable button simultaneously to start the ride, versus only the operator. These were added as an additional level of safety to prevent accidents like what happened at Sarah Havel Bobsled from ever happening again. Great Adventure originally had plans to close Sarah Havel Bobsled at the end of the 1987 season, and introduce a new major coaster on its site that was set to open in the spring of 1988. But due to the events of the decade, the park decided to sell off the attraction to its sister park, Six Flags Great America, where the coaster would open as Shockwave, an Aero Mega Looper which opened as the world's tallest and fastest looping coaster. Instead, Great Adventure made the last-minute decision to add new family attractions to the park. The goal was to draw families back and gain a renewed trust that the park was a fun, safe place that they always advertised it to be. For the 1988 season, the park introduced Condor, a husk-spinning family flat ride that would allow kids to ride with their parents and feel safe while introducing them to the park's larger rides. The park would also add Bugs Bunny Land. Located behind Rolling Thunder, Bugs Bunny Land would feature 6 new children's rides and include the retheme of many other children's rides and attractions. The 1988 season saw one of the lowest park attendance in park history at 1.9 million. Great Adventure needed a new major attraction to try to attract even more guests to the park. Great Adventure decided to close Sarah Havel Bobsled at the end of the 1988 season and send it into the Six Flags Ride Rotation Program. The Ride Rotation Program was where parks in the Six Flags chain would rotate different rides from park to park every few years in an attempt to boost attendance while adding a new attraction to the park. Sarah Havel Bobsled would be sent to Six Flags Great America as part of this program, where it would open as Rolling Thunder in the 1989 season. As a last-ditch effort, Great Adventure went back to their old plans and called Aerodynamics.
Following material contains scenes which are very racy.
It's here, the fastest, the tallest looping coaster on the face of this earth. And if you like this performance, wait till you catch it live. The Great American Scream Machine, only at Six Flags Great Adventure.
On September 29, 1988, Great Adventure announced the Great American Scream Machine, set to open in the Good Time Alley section of the park in the spring of 1989 at a cost of $6.8 million, or about $17.2 million in 2024's money. Scream Machine would take all of Shockwave's records and would be the world's tallest and fastest coaster. Standing at a height of 173 feet, have a drop of 155 feet, reaching speeds of 68 miles per hour, travel through 7 inversions, tied for the most of any coaster in the world, and have a ride length of 3,800 feet. While this might seem small for today's standards, it was very impressive in 1989. The original plan was to name the ride Ninja, as part of a way for the company to save on marketing. By using the same name, parks could use the same logo, have the same merchandise, and even advertise the rides that had similar looking profiles. But after issues with the crowds drawn to Ninja at Six Flags Magic Mountain, the decision was to go with a different name. Great Adventures Park president at the time, Ray Williams, who came from Six Flags Over Georgia, decided to theme the coaster after the wooden coaster at his former park with the same name and patriotic theme. Construction began in the fall of 1988. Sections of the parking lot were blocked off and work walls were extended out to accommodate the larger footprint of the ride in the storage area. Construction continued throughout the winter and the spring, but teams had a few delays due to the very cold and snowy winter. The ride was originally planned to open with the park on March 24th, but due to the trend of poor weather from the winter making its way into the spring during the final stages of construction, Great American Scream Machine ended up being a little bit delayed. The structure was complete, but the final stages of supports and welding continued, as well as work on the station and covering for the ride's queue line. Due to all the delays, the coaster ended up being over budget from $6.8 million or $17.2 million today to $7 million or $17.75 million today. The date would be pushed back 3 weeks, with the ride's media day being on April 14th and opening to the general public on April 15th. In total, it would take 136 days or about 4.5 months to build Scream Machine, and when it was completed, Great Adventure would introduce the world's tallest and fastest coaster that would put the park on the map for the very first time. This record wouldn't last long though, as just a few short weeks later on May 5th, 1989, Magnum XL200 debuted at Cedar Point and would take the height and speed record away from Scream Machine. The opening of Magnum at Cedar Point actually helped out the Great American Scream Machine. News broadcasts were often showing both coasters together, as the world's tallest and fastest coaster and the world's tallest and fastest looping coaster. For the opening ceremony, Park President Ray Williams cut the ribbon and members of the American coaster enthusiasts rode throughout the day for the media as they rode and toured the ride. Media Day proved that the ride was an instant hit, as many people praised its thrilling, smooth, and intense experience. The ride had 3 trains with names. The red train was known as Freedom, white was Liberty, and blue was Spirit. Each train had 7 cars that held 4 riders each for a total of 28 riders, for a total hourly capacity of 1,680 riders per hour. One cool fact about the trains is that in its early years, each car had lights on the sides of it that would light up the train's respective colors, making for some really cool visuals at night. For the first time at Great Adventure, Scream Machine featured an on-ride photo offering the park's first on-ride coaster pictures using technology that photographed the entire train. Until that point, the only on-ride photo that the park offered was on the log flume. That required a member of park staff to take a photo of the boat that were marked with an orange flag. The park made sure to prominently note Scream Machine's safety features during its media coverage, to help further reassure guests that Great Adventure was committed to guest safety. The coaster featured multiple state-of-the-art safety features. The trains were equipped with a dual redundant shoulder harness that featured a primitive version of a Verify that would prevent the ride system to allow a train to dispatch if a shoulder harness was open, and it also featured dual stairs on the lift hill just in case there was an evacuation. Most coasters featured stairs only on one side of the lift hill, but Six Flags opted to have the additional stairs just as an extra safety measure. The ride experience went as follows. The ride would dispatch out of the station and over the ride's transfer track. Once clear of the transfer track, the ride would go down a small drop and make a left-hand turn. The train would climb up the 173-foot tall lift hill and then head down the 155-foot drop bank to the left, reaching the ride's top speed of 68 miles per hour. The train would then fly up a large hill and at the top would feature the first vertical loop at a height of 136 feet in the air. At the time, this was the world's tallest inversion. After the first vertical loop, the ride would make a drawn-out bank 90-degree turn to the left, and then hit you with 2 powerful back-to-back vertical loops. The train would make a sharp upward descent slightly to the left and into the mid-course brake run, which would trim off some speed. The train would then drop slightly to the left and then to the right in an S-bend pattern into the ride's batwing inversions. Once the train exited the 2 inversions, the coaster would head into another bank drawn-out turn, this time to the right, into the back-to-back corkscrews. The train would head over a small drawn-out bunny hill that featured the same pattern as the corkscrews, and into one final drawn-out turn to the left into the final brakes. When all was said and done, the ride experience would last about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Now at any given time, Great American Scream Machine could run 3 trains at most. The block zones went as follows. A block was from the first turn to the top of the lift. B block was from the top of the lift to the mid-course brake run, and C block was from the mid-course brake run to the ride's first hold brake. One unique thing about Scream Machine is that the station, holding brake, and transfer tracks were not included in the block zones, but they were called neutral zones, which meant that trains were able to stop in these locations if needed. The ride featured its transfer track in front of the station versus behind like many modern day coasters. If the park staff needed to remove a train, they would park the train that they were taking out of service in the station and normally lift stop a train on the lift hill just to save a few minutes of downtime. Maintenance would then come out and put the attraction into maintenance mode, advance the train forward onto the transfer track, and then slide the train over to the maintenance shed. Scream Machine's maintenance shed was a part of the station building, located to the right of the load platform stairs. Once the transfer track was slid back into place, the ride could resume operation. Adding a train on though was a little bit different. It was a known rule at the park to never park a train on the lift when you were adding a train, and this was for a very good reason. When the maintenance team was transferring on a new train, they would send the new train down the pre-drop and onto the lift hill. So once the train has come to a complete stop on the lift, it would be about 3 or 4 cars up. Once the train was switched back into auto, the lift hill would be turned back on and the ride would resume operation. Now if you had a train parked on the lift hill in automatic mode, and another train was sent from the neutral zone onto the lift, this would cause a bunch of problems as only one train was allowed to be in the lift block at once. Now Scream Machine's lift hill was capable of holding 2 trains at one time, but it was never practiced. When the ride was running 2 trains, ride staff was trained to dispatch the second train when the first one has exited the mid-course brake run. When running 3 trains, park staff was trained to dispatch the third train at the bottom of the first drop. This was to ensure proper spacing between the trains to prevent a setup, which is very easy to do depending on the weather, lubricated trains, new wheels, and how hard the trims and brakes were hitting that day. The Scream Machine used state-of-the-art computer design to fabricate the track to more exact tolerances than could have been achieved before, but the ride's designers just didn't expect the ride to go as fast as it did. By today's standards, Scream Machine was pretty rough, but at the time it was known to be pretty smooth, especially since most coasters of its time were designed with a trial and error process. Despite the careful design, the ride's forces caused a good amount of wear and tear to the track, specifically the 3 vertical loops. After the 1992 season, the top of the 3 loops were replaced and now feature additional diagonal bracing. The supports and new track also featured a ladder for easier access for welding and inspections. You can still see one of the original sections of track today, as the park placed one of the tops of the vertical loops inside the baboon exhibit as a play structure for the animals. Another section of track that was replaced at this time was the turn into the mid-course brake run. While this section of track did not see the additional diagonal bracing like what was added to the tops of the loops, it saw the number of track ties almost double throughout most of the turn. The ride also saw the addition of trim brakes right after the ride's first vertical loop, affectionately known by the ride staff as the clapper, based off of the sound that they made when the train passed through them. The mid-course brakes were also adjusted and began slowing the trains to a near stop to help make the direction change less forceful for riders entering the batwing and into the corkscrews. Due to these changes, the ride became much more structurally sound and required much less welding than previous years. Around the same time, the trains were upgraded to feature larger diameter wheels. The original wheels were delaminating at an alarming rate, causing a lot more downtime than the park wanted. When a wheel delaminates, the compound that is on the wheel either wears or shreds apart, causing the steel rim to ride on the running rails. This could cause a much rougher ride experience due to the wheel no longer being a smooth circle versus feeling like you're riding on a dirt road. Maintenance would have to take the train out of service, put it in the maintenance shed, and replace a wheel. A wheel replacement could have been done very quickly and only took about 10 to 15 minutes, but this upset a lot of guests since the ride would have to take 2 downtimes, one to take the train off and one to put it back on. And the ride would have to run at a reduced capacity when it had a very long line. By the spring of 1990, Great American Scream Machine would lose its tallest and fastest looping coaster record to Viper, another Aero Mega Looper, debuting at Great Adventure's sister park, Six Flags Magic Mountain. In 1993, Scream Machine saw its first real hit at an attendance drop with the introduction of Batman the Ride, the second ever B&M inverted coaster. Standing at a height of 105 feet, reaching speeds of 50 miles an hour, and featuring 5 inversions, the coaster in terms of stats was not very impressive compared to Scream Machine, but what it did feature was a glass-smooth, ultra-intense ride experience that Scream Machine just couldn't compete with. For the 1994 season, the plaza and surrounding area in front of the entrance to Scream Machine changed as the area was themed to Edwards Air Force Base with the arrival of the Right Stuff motion simulator ride that was themed to feel like you were sitting in the cockpit of a T-38 supersonic jet. At the same time, Parachuter's Perch was repainted and rethemed to Parachute Training Center, Edwards Air Force Base Jump Tower. The 1995 season brought the Boardwalk, a game section located between the Parachute Training Center and the Carousel. In preparation for Batman and Robin the Chiller that was set to open in 1997, both Centrifuge and the Space Shuttle were relocated to the Scream Machine Plaza. Centrifuge was located in front of the old park administrative tent, and Space Shuttle was located in front of Scream Machine's Batwing. In 1999, Great Adventure would introduce Medusa, the world's first B&M floorless coaster. standing at a height of 142 feet, reaching speeds of 61 miles per hour, and featuring 7 inversions. While still not as tall or as fast as Scream Machine, Medusa basically made Scream Machine obsolete in every way possible. To keep in line with the flight theming of the area, the 2003 season saw Scream Machine's newest neighbor, Superman Ultimate Flight, a B&M flying coaster which was very unique to the coaster world at the time, as it was only the 3rd ever B&M flying coaster in the world. Superman was incredibly popular, drawing long lines of massive crowds to the area. While one would think that Superman may have pulled ridership away from Scream Machine, it was actually the opposite. Superman actually helped boost Scream Machine's ridership, as it drew many guests to the area of the park, as guests chose to ride Scream Machine during Superman's frequent breakdowns. The 2005 season was huge for Great Adventure. Scream Machine received a new paint job and looked brand new, but the real star was the Golden Kingdom.
A golden kingdom has been discovered at Six Flags Great Adventure. A land of mystery, a land of intrigue, and rising above it all, the tallest, fastest roller coaster on Earth, Kingdakev. You will hit 128 miles per hour and soar 456 feet in the air. It's a whole new great adventure.
The new land brought many changes to the boardwalk, with the Golden Kingdom's main entrance being located right next to Scream Machine's first drop. The Golden Kingdom's winding path would allow for some never-before-seen views of Scream Machine's first drop and first loop through the dense foliage. Unlike the addition of Superman though, the addition of the Golden Kingdom and Kingdakev, the newest coaster to take the record for the world's tallest and fastest coaster, did hurt Scream Machine's ridership, as it drew guests away from that section of the park. The 2006 season saw the addition of another new themed land, Plaza del Carnaval. This new land featured El Toro, an intimate prefabricated wooden coaster, further drawing more guests away from Scream Machine. The next few years saw wait times decrease more and more for the coaster, but the coaster was actually still seeing pretty decent ridership. The coaster was known to beat many of the park's other coasters in terms of ridership every season due to its high throughput, but by 2010, rumors began swirling around that Great American Scream Machine would be closing, and on July 5th, the park confirmed these rumors and announced that the ride would be closing permanently on July 18th. The coaster saw very long lines for the first time in years, as many guests wanted to pay their respects to the classic ride that they grew up with. Rumors were that the new 2011 coaster was supposed to be located in another section of the park, as Great Adventure wanted to keep their classic looping coaster around. But at the end of the day, the ride was just too costly to keep operating for it being such an unpopular attraction, so the park made the hard decision to permanently close Great American Scream Machine. At the same time that rumors began going around that Scream Machine would be closing at Great Adventure, rumors also began swirling that the ride would reopen at a different park. The rumored park would be Six Flags Over Texas. But due to the ride's track being well together, the cost of carefully deconstructing the ride and having it re-welded would most likely make the coaster much rougher than it already was, so the decision was made just to scrap the ride altogether. Spare parts and trains were sent to Six Flags Magic Mountain to be used on Viper. The same night that the ride closed, work walls went up around the ride's entrance and in the parking lot for demolition to begin. The crews got to work immediately removing the trains and then the transfer track and brake run. The station building, maintenance bay, and queue line were all quickly demolished to clear the area for larger cranes needed to remove the lift hill and the loops. Any areas of low track, like the corkscrews in the final turn, were also quickly removed so that way workers had better access to the site. In late August, as the final pieces of the ride were being removed from the site, Six Flags announced Scream Machine's replacement.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light. Stand up to your fear on the new Green Lantern Stand-Up Coaster. Last chance to save on Six Flags Season Passes. Hurry, price goes up and free parking offer goes away after May 30th. Go big. Go Six Flags Great Adventure.
Green Lantern, a B&M stand-up coaster, would take the place of Scream Machine for the 2011 season. Formerly known as Chang and located at Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom, Six Flags removed the coaster from the property after closing the park down after the 2009 season. Standing at a height of 154 feet, reaching speeds of 63 miles per hour, featuring 5 inversions, and a total track length of 4,155 feet, Green Lantern was one of the world's tallest and fastest stand-up coasters. The coaster was relocated to Six Flags Great America, where it sat in storage for a year, which was weird because the park already had Iron Wolf, which was the world's first ever B&M coaster, which also happened to be a stand-up coaster. The coaster was shipped away to be repainted before being sent down to Great Adventure. Originally, the ride featured a yellow corkscrew, but this was quickly changed back to the green just like the rest of the ride. But the loop was instead repainted to a similar yellow that it featured as Chang. This was done to slightly theme the ride to a battle between Green Lantern and the Parallax. This theming didn't last long though, as the main themed element, a 3D parallax reaching for the train, was removed just a few seasons after the ride opened and replaced with a flat cutout. So why is it gone? Since Great American Scream Machine's construction, its manufacturer Arrow continued to build their looping coasters using the same design element. While they were popular at the time, the decline of the company came from the lack of innovation and motivation to modernize their coaster building process. Ron Toomer very much had the "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" mindset. Once Arrow tried to modernize the design, it was too late, as Parks were working with other manufacturers like B&M and Intamin, who were creating intense, smooth custom layouts and custom style coasters that were for the most part pretty reliable coasters. Well, at least for B&M anyway. This led to Arrow filing for bankruptcy in 2001. Parts became harder and harder to find for the aging coaster. In 2002, Shockwave at Six Flags Great America closed at the end of the season, and Parks was spread between Scream Machine and Viper to extend their service lives. But by 2010, operational costs were just too much for the park to want to keep the aging, unpopular coaster. I wish the park would have held out just a few more years, so that Scream Machine could have possibly received an upgraded train design, possibly one with vest restraints instead of shoulder harnesses, as this would have greatly improved rider comfort, and who knows, maybe the ride might still be around today. Well, that's gonna do it for today's episode of Why Is It Gone? So tell me, did you ever get the chance to ride Scream Machine? What did you think of it? Would you rather have Scream Machine or Green Lantern? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to see your favorite defunct ride on the series, leave it in the comments below and I'll try my best to cover it in a future episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, as it really helps the channel out, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care. Bye.